Can we speed this up? Victoria Ashford said without looking up. I have a lunch reservation. She didn't wait for permission. At 23, Victoria sat with one leg crossed over the other, scrolling through her phone as if she were stuck in a customer service queue. Instead of standing before a judge, her tone carried boredom, not concern, not respect. Judge Frank Caprio slowly set his pen on the bench. Miss Ashford, he said evenly, this is a courtroom. Put the phone away and address the charges. Victoria glanced up briefly.
I'm here. Isn't that enough?
Her attorney, David R. Hale, rose quickly, smoothing his suit jacket. Your Honor, my client is prepared to pay all applicable fines and resolve this matter today. Mr. Hale, sit down, Caprio replied. The words were quiet, but unmistakably firm. This court is not a payment portal. Hale hesitated, then sat. The room felt heavier. Judge Caprio tapped his pen once. Officer Dantis, confirm the body camera audio is ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
The clerk stepped forward. Docket 24 Fun 847. Commonwealth versus Victoria Marie Ashford. Charges include unauthorized use of a disabled and van-accessible parking space, destruction of a citation, failure to appear on 3 summons notices, and contempt for prior non-appearance. Citation issued Wednesday at 9:42 a.m. Caprio leaned forward. Miss Ashford, did you receive the 3 summons notices mailed to your residence? My assistant handles the mail. That wasn't my question. Did you receive them? I guess. You guess. Caprio turned to the clerk. Delivery confirmation. Yes, Your Honor. 3 certified notices, all signed for the defendant's address. Caprio flipped a page. There's also a prior advisory here. 14 months ago, campus parking enforcement cited you for blocking a loading zone at Brown University for over an hour. Victoria shrugged. I don't remember. Probably nothing. The report says you told the attendant my family donated the library. Caprio looked up. This isn't punishment for today. It's pattern. David Hale stood again. Your Honor, my client acknowledges she could have handled things better. She's prepared to pay the fines and move forward. Paying a fine teaches only one thing, Caprio said calmly. How to write a check. I want to understand what happened. He turned back to Victoria. Walk me through Wednesday morning. Victoria sighed, audibly irritated. I parked in front of a pharmacy on Hope Street. I was inside maybe 10 minutes. When I came out, there was a ticket on my windshield. I tore it up. I didn't think it was valid. You parked in a disabled and van-accessible space. No one was using it. That wasn't the question, Caprio replied. You parked in a space clearly marked with the international symbol of access and diagonal striping, correct? Yes, but it was empty. No harm, no foul, Caprio said. Is not only collision. Harm is denial. He picked up a paper. Let me read one sentence from a written statement submitted by Laura Bennett, who arrived at that pharmacy at 90:51 m. He paused, then read aloud. The ramp could not lower. My daughter missed her therapy window. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. That's not my fault. She could have parked somewhere else. David Hale objected. Your Honor, we're introducing emotional context that isn't material to the citation. Counselor, Caprio replied, access denial is the material fact. Miss Bennett's daughter uses a wheelchair. Your client blocked the only van-accessible space. That isn't emotional. That's factual harm. He turned toward the side wall. Please read your narrative into the record. Officer Leah Romano stepped forward, composed and precise. At 9:42 a.m., I observed a silver luxury sedan parked in a van-accessible space in front of Hope Street Pharmacy. The space was properly marked. The vehicle displayed no disabled placard or plate. I issued a citation and placed it on the windshield. At 9:53 a.m., I observed the driver exit the pharmacy, remove the citation, tear it in half, and discard it on the sidewalk. She continued. When I approached and informed her of the violation, she stated, "This is ridiculous. Do you know who I am?" When I explained the citation was valid, she said, "Then write another one. My family funds this city." The courtroom went quiet. Caprio looked up. Officer Romano, did you perceive that statement as intimidation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Victoria leaned forward. That was sarcasm. I was annoyed. Let's hear it, Caprio said. Officer Dantis, play the body camera audio. Static hissed briefly, then Victoria's voice filled the room, sharp, clipped, unmistakable. My family funds this city. Caprio let the silence sit. Miss Ashford, he said finally, your father is Marcus Ashford, founder of Ashford Innovations.
Yes.
And your family has made significant philanthropic contributions to Providence. Yes. When you said, my family funds this city, what did you mean? We support the community. Caprio turned back to the officer. Officer Romano, how did you interpret it? As leverage, Your Honor, Romano said. an implied consequence for enforcing the law. The judge nodded slowly. And that, he said, is exactly why we're here. Sarcasm doesn't lower ramps, Miss Ashford. Judge Caprio's voice was calm, but it carried weight. He turned slightly toward the clerk. Miss Reyes, were there any contacts made to this court regarding this case prior to today's hearing? The clerk flipped through a neatly organized logbook. Yes, Your Honor. 2 incoming calls and 1 voicemail, all from a number registered to Ashford Innovations, Donor Relations. Caprio didn't react. Timestamps? First call at 1:18 a.m. Second call at 1:47 a.m. Voicemail left at 11:12 a.m. Additionally, we received an email at 10:52 a.m. from a civic philanthropy liaison referencing a quiet resolution. Kurt read the email into the record. The clerk cleared her throat. Subject case 24-1-847 resolution. Body. We understand a citation was issued this morning to a member of the Ashford family. Given the family's long-standing support of municipal initiatives, we'd like to discuss options for resolving this matter quietly and efficiently before it proceeds further. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. David Hale was on his feet immediately. Your Honor, my client is not responsible for communications initiated by her family's foundation. This is irrelevant. Overruled, Caprio said evenly. Pressure on process is relevant when it's logged. I'm not accusing anyone of criminal conduct. I'm documenting facts. Victoria shifted in her seat. I didn't ask them to call. Maybe not, Caprio replied. But someone believed it might help. He paused. Let's look at the timeline. Citation at 90 Fortis call at 1:18. That's 36 minutes. Email at 10:52. Someone moved quickly. Caprio turned back to the clerk. Is Miss Laura Bennett available to give a brief statement? Yes, Your Honor. By phone. Put her through. The speaker crackled, then a woman's voice filled the courtroom. Steady, but strained. Thank you, Your Honor. My daughter has cerebral palsy. She receives physical therapy twice a week. Wednesday was a critical session. She took a breath. We arrived at the pharmacy at 9:51 a.m. to pick up her medication before therapy. The van accessible space was blocked. I couldn't lower the side entry ramp. By the time we found another spot and got inside, we missed the first 20 minutes. The therapist had to reschedule. Her voice tightened. Access is infrastructure. It's not optional? Victoria muttered something under her breath. Caprio caught it instantly. Miss Ashford, if you have something to say it clearly. I said it was 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Caprio replied. There's a therapy window. He turned back to the speaker. Miss Bennett, thank you. Your statement is on the record. The line clicked off. Caprio picked up another document. Miss Reyes, these are the 3 summons notices sent to Miss Ashford's residence. Can you confirm delivery? Yes. Your Honor, first notice mailed October 2nd, signed for October 4th. Second mailed October 16th, signed October 18th. Final notice mailed October 30th, signed November 1st. All 3 were signed by V. Ashford or per V. Ashford. Victoria's jaw tightened. My assistant signs for things. But you knew about them, Caprio said. I don't read every piece of mail. Miss Ashford? Caprio replied. 3 certified notices over 4 weeks isn't oversight. It's pattern. David Hale stood again, more cautiously this time. Your Honor, given the Ashford family's role in municipal philanthropy, we respectfully request that the remainder of this hearing be handled off the public calendar. Public proceedings could create unnecessary complications for ongoing civic partnerships. Caprio didn't raise his voice. Mr. Hale, sunlight is fairness. We're staying on the record. He fixed his gaze on Victoria. I'm going to ask you 3 yes or no questions. Did you park in a disabled and van accessible space without authorization?
Yes.
Did you tear up the citation and discard it? Yes. Did you ignore 3 summons notices? Victoria hesitated. I didn't think they were serious. That's not a no, Caprio said. Did you ignore them?
Yes.
Victoria's voice suddenly rose. This is absurd. My family has donated millions to this city. We fund programs. We support infrastructure. You wouldn't have half your budget without us. Caprio's response was immediate. Donations don't purchase exemptions. They should purchase respect. Victoria leaned forward. Do you know how much my father contributes to municipal operations? Your salary is paid by taxpayers like us. David Hale jumped up. Your Honor, my client is. I own you. The words hung in the air. 5 seconds passed, then 7, then 10. It was the moment money ran out of jurisdiction. No one moved, no one spoke. Victoria stared at the bench, realizing too late what she had said. David Hale's face drained of color. Officer Romano stood motionless near the wall. Then Caprio spoke quietly. Miss Ashford, you own nothing in this courtroom. Not the process, not the outcome, not me. He picked up the file. Here's my finding. The evidence supports all 4 charges. Officer Romano's narrative is credible and corroborated by body camera audio, fixed camera photographs, the torn citation, 3 delivery confirmed summons notices, and the documented timeline of Foundation calls and emails. He closed the folder. Miss Ashford parked in a disabled and van-accessible space, denying critical access to a family with mobility needs. And for the first time that morning, Victoria had nothing left to say. She destroyed a citation. She ignored 3 summons notices over the course of 4 weeks, and she invoked her family's financial contributions in a manner that Officer Romano reasonably perceived as intimidation. Judge Caprio paused, allowing each fact to settle into the room. This court does not weigh cases based on wealth, donations, or the size of a family foundation. He continued, borrowed money is not borrowed authority. Miss Ashford, your family's philanthropy does not grant you ownership of public process. Your status does not erase harm. Access is not for auction. He turned a page in the file. I also note the prior advisory from campus parking enforcement. That advisory was instructional, not punitive. You were told, clearly, that loading zones matter. You were given the opportunity to learn without consequence. You chose not to internalize that lesson. Caprio looked directly at her. Consequences exist to teach what privilege once concealed. He glanced down again. The base fines total $750. He read them into the record one by one. Unauthorized use of a disabled and van-accessible parking space, $300. Contempt for failure to appear, $300. Administrative fees, $150. Victoria exhaled sharply, already bracing. Caprio raised a hand. I'm not finished. I am staying $400 of that total, contingent upon your full and timely completion of a restorative accountability plan. If you complete it, that portion will be remitted. If you do not, it will be reinstated and you will pay the full amount. The courtroom grew still. Here is what the plan requires. First, Caprio said, you will write personal apologies to Officer Leah Romano and to Laura Bennett. Not form letters, not statements drafted by a public relations team. Real apologies that clearly name what you did, the harm it caused, and what you learned. He added, if both parties agree, you will deliver those apologies in person. If either declines, you will mail them, and this court will confirm receipt. Second, you will complete 150 hours of community service, split between 2 organizations. 75 hours at the Rhode Island Food Bank, and 75 hours with the Mobility Access Coalition, assisting with accessibility audits and community outreach. Caprio's voice remained steady. Both organizations will submit attendance logs directly to the court. There will be no press releases, no photo opportunities, and no public branding of this work. Third, you will write and record 2 public service announcements for school distribution, both subject to court approval. The topics will be access equity and the difference between charity and entitlement. Fourth, you will complete a donor influence ethics module covering the separation between philanthropy and public process. Certification of completion will be filed with this court. Fifth, Caprio continued, you will submit a 900-word written reflection on the subject of money versus authority. Not slogans, not talking points. Plain truth, in your own words. He set his pen down deliberately. Mercy, he said, is not a discount, it's a contract. Then he lifted his eyes. Additionally, I am making the following recommendations on the record to municipal court administration and to the office of the mayor. First, establish an ex parte influence log for all cases. Any off-record communication attempt, including those from donors or their representatives, must be documented and published weekly. Second, create a donor contact firewall with mandatory disclosure. Any case involving a defendant whose family has made significant municipal donations must be flagged, and any donor-related contact must be disclosed immediately. Third, implement mandatory supervisor co-sign and recusal protocols. If any court staff member is contacted by a donor representative regarding a pending case, that staff member must either recuse or obtain written supervisor authorization. Caprio closed the file. This court exists to protect access, not advantage, to preserve fairness, not favor, and to remind those with power that public space belongs to everyone. He looked at Victoria one final time. Compliance will be monitored. Deadlines will be enforced. And if this plan is treated as performative rather than corrective, the court will respond accordingly. The gavel came down softly. Court was adjourned. Fourth, Judge Caprio continued, develop a disabled Beto first escalation policy. Unauthorized vehicles in van accessible spaces must trigger immediate towing protocols to minimize access denial. Access delayed is access denied. Fifth, create a municipal public service announcement series on access rights, featuring real testimony from families who rely on accessible infrastructure. Let lived experience educate where signature alone fails. Sixth, launch a confidential clerk hotline for reporting influence attempts. Any effort to leverage donations, personal connections, or wealth to affect judicial or administrative outcomes must be reportable anonymously. Every report will be investigated. The judge paused, then concluded, these measures protect the system. Over the next 12 weeks, Victoria Ashford completed the court's plan piece by piece. Week 1 began with the apology. Her first draft was rejected. Too polished, too careful, unmistakably written by someone else. The court sent it back with a single note, use your own words. She tried again. The second version was imperfect, direct and unguarded. This time it passed. Officer Lee Romano agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop near the courthouse. The meeting was brief, uncomfortable, and necessary. Romano didn't raise her voice. When you said your family funds the city, Romano told her, you made me feel like my job was for sale. It isn't. Victoria nodded. There was nothing to argue. Laura Bennett accepted the written apology but declined an in-person meeting. She later emailed the court. She named what she took from us, Bennett wrote. That's enough. Weeks 2 through 10 were devoted to service. At the Rhode Island Food Bank, Victoria logged 70, 5 hours sorting donations, stocking shelves, assembling boxes, and assisting with distribution logistics. There were no cameras, no announcements, no recognition. One volunteer coordinator told her, quietly, service isn't about who sees you do it. At the Mobility Access Coalition, she spent the remaining 75 hours assisting with accessibility audits of local businesses. She learned how ramp angles are measured, why door widths matter, and how minor design choices can determine whether someone enters a building or turns away. She helped schedule community outreach visits. She listened. One wheelchair user told her plainly, access isn't a favor, it's a right. By week 9, it was time to record the public service announcements. The first versions were rejected, too corporate, too scripted, too distant. The court sent them back. She recorded them again. This time, there was no branding, no mention of her family, no attempt to soften the message. Just her voice and the truth. The second versions passed. The donor influence ethics module took another 3 weeks. She completed it without complaint. The lessons were simple but uncompromising. Philanthropy does not confer authority. Donations do not purchase discretion, and public systems fail when influence goes untracked. By the end, the ledger was clear. 150 hours completed, 2 PSAs approved, 1 ethics module certified, 1 firewall established, 1 entitlement interrupted. Officer Romano later submitted a short statement to the court. She showed up every time, she wrote. That matters. 12 weeks after the initial hearing, Victoria returned to court. This time she came alone. No attorney, no family representative. No entourage. Judge Caprio reviewed the file in silence, the apology letters, the service logs, the PSA recordings, the ethics certification, the written reflection. He looked up. Miss Ashford, he said, I've read your reflection. I want to hear you summarize it in your own words. Victoria stood. I thought money made things easier, she said. I thought it created space. I learned that it can also create blind spots. I treated access like convenience and authority like inheritance. I was wrong. She paused. I didn't lose anything that day, she continued. Someone else did, and I didn't see it until I had to stand where they stand. Caprio nodded once. That, he said. He closed the file. The stayed portion of the fine is remitted. This matter is concluded. The gavel fell, softly, and for the first time since the citation was written, the process had done exactly what it was designed to do. No script. No prepared remarks. Victoria Ashford stood on her own. I thought money meant access, she said quietly. I thought that because my family donated to programs, I could park wherever I wanted, ignore tickets, skip court dates. I thought we fund this meant I owned this. She took a breath. I didn't understand that public office isn't for sale. It's for service. The courtroom was silent. When I told you I owned you, she continued, I was wrong. I don't own anything except my own choices. Money can build a library, but it can't buy my way out of blocking someone's ramp. Her voice steadied. I blocked Miss Bennett's daughter from accessing therapy. I told Officer Romano her job was for sale. Both of those things were wrong. Judge Caprio looked up. What did you learn from Officer Romano? That public servants aren't employees of my family's foundation, Victoria said. They serve the community, not individual donors. When I used our donations as leverage, I tried to corrupt that. And what did you learn from the Mobility Access Coalition? That accessible parking isn't about convenience, she replied. It's about math. Ramp angles, clearance widths, transfer space. When I blocked that space for 10 minutes, I didn't just delay someone. I denied them access to medication. She paused. Time is infrastructure. Caprio nodded slowly. You stopped trying to own the system, he said, and started learning to respect it. He signed a form. I'm remitting $350 of the state portion. You still owe $400 total, payable in installments over 6 months. The court will monitor compliance. He looked at her once more. As a reminder, Miss Ashford, access is not for auction. Thank you, Your Honor, she said. Don't thank me, Caprio replied. Thank the people who taught you what I couldn't. 5 months later, the policies began to take root. The court published its first ex parte influence log. In the first month alone, 3 donor-related contact attempts were recorded. Each was handled transparently under the new firewall protocol. Court staff reported feeling protected by the disclosure requirements. The donor contact firewall was adopted across all municipal courts. Cases involving families with significant municipal donations were automatically flagged. Supervisor co-sign and recusal protocols were implemented without incident. Citywide, the disabled Beto first escalation policy went into effect. Average clearance time for unauthorized vehicles dropped by 47%. Complaints from wheelchair users decreased sharply. The Municipal Public Service Announcement series launched soon after, featuring testimony from families who relied on accessible infrastructure. Victoria's recordings were included and distributed to 31 schools. They weren't viral, they weren't celebrated, but they were used, and that was enough. One parent emailed the court. My son watched the PSA about van accessible spaces and asked why people block them. We had a real conversation about access being a right, not a privilege. Thank you. On a quiet Friday afternoon, Judge Caprio finished his last case of the week. Before leaving, he wrote a single sentence on a note card and pinned it to the bulletin board behind his bench. Public offices are not for sale. They are for service. He thought of Victoria Ashford, standing alone without counsel or family backing. He thought of Officer Romano, standing in a parking lot with someone's wealth thrown in her face. He thought of Laura Bennett's daughter, waiting in a van while therapy minutes slipped away. He turned off the lights. He locked the door. And the system, quietly, deliberately, kept doing what it was meant to do.